Shavua Tov. In this week's Parsha, the Jews are going at each other. There is a mini rebellion, and the response is surprising. Now, this is not the first rebellion that we've had in the last few Parshas. We had it 2 weeks ago when Jews do what Jews do best, complain about the menu. They didn't like the manna, and that was a mini rebellion. They said, let's get a leader and go back to Egypt. And there were consequences. And then, of course, last week, when they rebelled by believing the spies and not believing Joshua and Caleb, and there was divisiveness, and of course there were consequences very severe to wander in the desert for 40 years. But when Korach raises his flag of rebellion, saying to Moses and Aaron that the entire congregation are holy, why should you, Moses and Aaron, be exalted above them? Why should you have any special status or privileges that the rest of us don't have, when the rest of us are also a holy people? That was Korach's rebellion, and the response to that puts the other responses into, well, I wouldn't say to shame, but far, far outstrips those. Because here God intervened by creating a plague, a miracle, opening the earth's mouth to swallow up Korach, a brand new thing. Very harsh. Not only that, this rebellion comes with a warning, or a mitzvah of lo ta'aseh, a negative commandment according to some, that one shall not be like Korach and his congregation. It doesn't say that at the end of Shlach, that one should not be like the spies, nor does it say it at the end of Behalotcha, that one should not be like those who lusted for meat. Nor does it even say it after the golden calf, that one should not be like those who worship a golden calf. Now, obviously, it's self-evident one should not worship a golden calf. Neither should one be lusting after anything. Neither should one be rejecting the land of Israel. But the Torah doesn't spell it out. But here the Torah spells it out and says, don't be like Korach and his congregation. What is so nefarious about Korach's rebellion that brings about such a harsh punishment and a warning, a mitzvah lo ta'aseh at the end of it? Well, we ask the question, and it gets even more intense if we think about just exactly what Korach's rebellion was about. It seems to pale in comparison to the previous ones. Nobody is saying, let's get a leader and go back to Egypt. Nobody is saying, let's worship a golden calf, for heaven's sake. Nobody is saying, we don't want to go into the land of Israel. Quite the opposite. Korach is saying, we want to go already. Why are we here? You, Moses, have failed to bring us into the land of Israel. We're stuck here in the desert. Seems to be that is not nearly as intense or severe as those previous mini rebellions, and yet it is treated much harsher. Not only that, what is it that Korach is seeking, according to what he says? He is seeking the right for every Jew who wishes to serve in the tabernacle to serve in the tabernacle. It shouldn't just be Moses and Aaron and the Kohanim. The whole system, says Korach, is unfair. We should have equity, to borrow a modern term. So that's okay, fine. It's not correct, but it doesn't seem to be so severe, and yet it is. Why so? I think that the first thing we need to understand is that the Torah is setting up the Jewish people to survive and thrive throughout history. And to be quite honest, a golden calf is probably not going to come back, even though there were golden calves in the time of Jeroboam, the son of Nevat, but that's not the sort of thing that the people are going to do every Monday and Thursday. Certainly the sin of the spies was a one-off. It would not happen again. The nation of Israel has such a powerful love affair with our land that such a sin would be unthinkable in any other generation. So therefore there was no need to give an extra lo ta'aseh, an extra negative commandment or warning. But in this week's Parsha, the nefariousness of Korach's sins and Korach's rebellion, which you have to dig a little bit to see, is something which is a threat and a danger in every generation. And therefore it has to be dealt with much more harshly and much more, shall we say, prominently, so that we will learn the importance of not being like Korach and his congregation. Now, let's take a little deeper look into the rebellion and see what those things that we have to avoid for the future are. Now, the great Rabbi Yosef Dov Soloveitchik describes this rebellion, as a common sense rebellion, because Korach is saying things that the average person can connect to, a populist kind of a message, if you will. Everybody is holy. We're all special. Why should anybody be more special than anyone else? Everybody has a sense of fairness to them. And Korach then creates a little theatrical act. He takes people and puts them in garments that are entirely made out of sky blue, techelet. And he says to Moses, do these garments require fringes, tzitzit? The tzitzit are fringes, 8 threads that are attached to the four corners of each garment, and one of those threads has to be made out of the color of techelet. Nowadays, we don't have it as much as we did once upon a time. It's making a comeback. That's an entirely different discussion, but you need at least one thread that has techelet. So Korach brings garments that are entirely out of techelet, 4 corners, but they have no fringes. And he asks Moses, do they require fringes? And Moses says, of course. And Korach laughs at him and he says, ha! If a garment with fringes has one thread, and one thread is enough to exempt the entire garment from the mitzvah. In other words, you can wear such a garment as long as it has the tzitzit, which include one thread of techelet. If one thread is sufficient to legitimize this garment, so if the garment is itself entirely made out of techelet, of that color, then it shouldn't require tzitzit at all. It should certainly be kosher. That was, again, a common sense argument that when you first hear it, it makes a little bit of sense, but the minute you delve into it, it's completely ridiculous. And Moses calls it out on such a level. What exactly was Korach trying to say? Before we go into that question, we point out one critical factor, and this is perhaps the first of the reasons why this rebellion is so severe. Because Korach, by disagreeing with Moses is the one who received the Torah from Hashem, and Jews believe in Torah min Hashemayim, that the Torah comes from heaven, and that Moshe Rabbeinu is the human being who gave us the Torah. One can argue with any other sage in any other generation, but when Moses is speaking as a prophet and telling you what the Torah is, what the mitzvah is, well, then one may not argue with Moses. We say in the Yigdal, which is the song that proclaims the 13 articles of faith, Torah emet natan le'am ho'el, the Torah of truth was given to his people by God, al yad neviyo ne'eman beito, by the means of his prophet, the faithful one in his house. That refers to Moses, about whom it says, B'chol beiti ne'eman, who in all of my house he is faithful. This is an article of faith. So Korach, by claiming that he could make his own decisions about what the mitzvah shall be, is denying that Moses is the lawgiver and denying Torah min Hashemayim. That in and of itself is a very, very severe prohibition. And the whole concept of Korach arguing on the selection of Aharon as the high priest is also denying Torah min Hashemayim, because God said expressly that Aharon is to be the high priest. So that is certainly a danger for generations. We believe the Torah min Hashemayim. The minute we stop believing the Torah is min Hashemayim, the Torah disappears, because then the pressures of any society which decides that it has a different or a better set of values will then push aside the Torah values, and that will not be able to endure. So that's number one. But now let's take a look further at that little act, that little trick with the talit of techelet, and without the tzitzit or with the tzitzit. What is Korach thinking to say? Because it's absurd. The mitzvah is to put fringes on the garment, no matter what the garment looks like. If the garment says the greatest things, I believe with a full belief, whatever you want to put on that garment, whatever color it's going to be, doesn't make a difference. It still requires the fringes. And so it seems to be obvious. What is Korach saying? Well, Korach is making a parable, of course. He's saying that the people are the garment, and the tzitzit, which go out of the garment, are the leaders. And if the garment is holy, well, then you don't need leaders. In other words, says Korach, one can achieve a level where they are religious enough. They are spiritual enough. We don't need leaders anymore. And tzitzit symbolize not just leadership, but they symbolize constant growth. This garment seems to be complete, but there is a fringe sticking out of each of the corners to teach us we still need to always grow. The word tzitzit comes from the word lahatzitz, to peek out. And I also think there's a connection to the word latzet, to go out, because we have an interesting phrase. When a person fulfills a commandment, we say they were yotzei yedei hamitzvah. They went out at the hands of the mitzvah. What does it mean they went out? It means we grow. We go from here to the place, from the place where we are to a new place. By doing this mitzvah, we spiritually grow, and that is a lifelong journey. And that is the definition of holiness, of kedusha, of spirituality. Because the one who rejects kedusha, who rejects holiness, says that the purpose of life is to enjoy it. And such a person will therefore be pursuing those things in life that bring pleasure and enjoyment. But that is not the Jewish way, as we mentioned previously. The famous Ramban on Parshat Kedoshim says that a person who decides, I love eating, I'm just going to spend my whole day eating and being with my wife, and the food I'm going to eat is going to be glatt kosher, and the times that I'm going to be with my wife are the times when she is ritually pure. So he's not going to violate even one sentence, even one word of the Shulchan Aruch, of the Jewish law. But this is his purpose in life. Such a person, says the Ramban, is violating a prohibition in the Torah. He's violating a positive commandment of Kedoshim to you, of being holy, because a spiritual person realizes that anything that this world has to offer is a means, not an ends. And that is the argument that Korach was going to advance. That the mitzvot are an ends. That once one can achieve, that enjoying life is the ends, and the mitzvot are just the means. So therefore, if I can enjoy life, if I've achieved a level of holiness, if everything is glatt kosher, that's all I need. I don't need tzitzit. I don't need to grow. I don't need to aspire to anything more. And that is a very dangerous attitude as well. Because a Jew does not live to enjoy life. A Jew lives to actively pursue a life of spiritual growth and improving themselves, their society, and the world. And that is a never-ending mission. Unlike Korach, who looks at the privilege and looks at the status rather than the process. I deal with actors. And there are two types of actors. There are those actors who want to be stars, and then there are those actors who just love acting. And the difference is quite clear. The one who wants to be a star will probably do enough work to become a star, but they don't feel that fulfillment, because there's nothing in this world that fulfills the soul more than constant growth. Whereas the actor who does it for the love of the art will feel that constant sense of growth to bring from that world into the spiritual world. And so therefore that is a second danger of Korach. The idea, the negation of Kedusha, of holiness, of spirituality. And even though he uses the phrase, the entire congregation is holy, this is the third danger of Korach. Using phrases and sayings that sound very convincing, common sense, as the Rav said, but really conceal a darker personal agenda. The rabbis fill in the blanks. Korach's whole reason for raising this rebellion and declaiming the unfairness of Moses and Aaron having privilege is because he was jealous of some other relative being appointed the prince of the Kehatim, the family of Levites to which he belonged. And his wife, according to the rabbis, was constantly stoking that fire that Moses detests you, he's making fun of you, he's mocking you, making Korach have resentment. And this is perhaps the most important point. The evil eye. Korach is looking with an evil eye. He's looking for the insult. He's looking to be a victim. This is the most dangerous thing. A person should live their lives never looking for who is oppressing or victimizing or insulting or disrespecting them. A person should not be looking to be angry to feel hurt, but rather a person should always be looking to find the joy, to find the beauty, to find the positive things in life. Korach is a serial complainer. And if you're going to be a serial complainer, so then a person will go down a dark path to anger, to hatred, to division, to an unfulfilled and an unhappy life. If everybody walks around with the proverbial chip on their shoulders, then they're not going to achieve happiness. They're going to spend their time blaming their lack of happiness on someone else rather than taking the positive actions to achieve that happiness. And so that, I think, is another reason why this rebellion is so important, because we learn from it our own personal character. We learn faith in Torah min hashamayim. We learn the importance of unity. We learn the importance of Kedusha, of constant growth, and most importantly, we learn the importance of looking for the good things and not for the bad things in order to continue to improve the world we are in. Shavua Tov.